All right, so I'm gonna go ahead and get started. I'm probably more recording this session for posterity than
Yep.
anything else.
Go back on mute.
I was about to put you on mute. So there's this. We've had sort of the same looking site on JenkinsCI.org for as long as there's been a JenkinsCI.org. And what a lot of people may not know about this is that this is a Drupal installation, which has served us fairly well. But because it's a Drupal installation, much of the content is stored off in a database somewhere. And a lot of the layout and everything else is also provisioned on machines somewhere. And there's not a whole lot of contribution that we've been able to solicit with the Drupal version of the site. It's been somewhat onerous to contribute to, even for those of us who are regular contributors like myself. So a couple of years ago, I exported the Drupal site, exported the Drupal database into a Jekyll site. Jekyll is a static site generator that's very popular on GitHub for GitHub pages. And I showed Kosuke and just we never followed through with porting the rest of the site over to it. Earlier this year, I picked it back up and tweaked it, and we now have a almost 100% replica of the Drupal version of the site that's located on JenkinsCI.org, imported into this Git tree and being built with a static site generator. So JenkinsCI.org, JenkinsCI.org is where the current site is. And if you go to jenkins.lasagna.io, this is currently hosted off of GitHub pages. This isn't going to be, the final version of the site, but this is an example of the statically generated site. And one of the very, I'd say, important aspects of this new statically generated site, most of it looks the same. There's a couple things missing, and explicitly so. Probably one of the most important things is down here at the bottom, this improve this page link. So every page, because this all is sourced from files that are statically generated, every page has a link that goes off into GitHub, where you can edit the page itself and submit a pull request right there in line from GitHub. So if I wanted to change things, I could create a branch and create a pull request directly from the site, which is pretty powerful. That also means that the entirety of the site and all of these links all have in the Etherpad, which is just etherpad osl.org/Jenkins-Hacksgiving. But all of the content for the site is inside of this Jenkins.io repository. And Jenkins.io is a domain name that we have for the Jenkins project now. And that's more than likely where we'll deploy the brand new version of the site, not the static version of the site, but the brand new version of the site when it's prepared. So what I wanted to do is sort of walk through contributing to this site. There is the improve this page version. And if I go into, here's this Hacksgiving blog post. If I go into this Hacksgiving blog post, down at the bottom, I see improve this page here as well. And I can go in and edit the page, the blog post as well after the fact, which is pretty neat. But the way I'll sort of talk about contribution is through a Git checkout of this repository directly. So let me jump to the other screen. I've got the IRC at the right in my tiled window manager. That's just so I can see any questions as they come up. Anyways, so I've got this this checkout of Jenkins.io here, and there's a couple of interesting files in here. The most important one is the build.gradle. This is a Gradle project. let's look at the README before I get too far. And one of the nice things about this being a Gradle project is it's very easy to build. Oops, caps lock is on. It's very easy to build. So I can build the site with just Gradle Assemble, which is what I'm going to do right now. And what this will do on the first build run, when you build the site, it's going to resolve all the dependencies, make sure that it's got everything that it needs to build the site, and then it goes through a series of tasks. And one of those tasks, which is running right now, is fetch external resources. So content like, well, that runs, I'll jump back over. Content like the changelog is dynamic in that this changelog file is actually checked into the Jenkins core repository. So to generate the site, we need to go grab that. The version that you see in the sidebar for the download, that is also dynamic content. So there's a couple files that we update when we release a new version of the Jenkins site that are downloaded in this Gradle Assemble step. You see the LTS, this Gradle Assemble step, and included in the site, so that there's nothing dynamic actually happening when you visit the site, but more it's being fetched dynamically when you build the site. Come back over and check chat every now and again. So after we got the external resources, which you can see here on this line, we start copying a lot of content and stop that. Then we start executing the actual generation of the site. And all of this execution is using a tool called Awestruct. And Awestruct is a static site tool. It works very similarly to tools like Jekyll. There's so many different static site generators out there. One of the reasons that I chose this one is it's used by ASCIIdoctor.org, and ASCIIdoctor is one of the most useful ASCIIdoc tools that I've worked with, and so I've become very, very familiar with ASCIIdoc for writing documentation. But also, Awestruct is very versatile. So a lot of the content that we have from the old version of the site is either Markdown or HTML. And not everything that we're going to be building is going to be Markdown or HTML. We need little partials defined in one template language, and then
You went silent, Tyler.
I lose network?
You lost something.
Well, now it's back a little bit. Ugh, this network is awful. So where was the last thing that you heard me say, Andrew? Bueller?
I'm not entirely sure.
All right, glad you're paying attention.
You were showing that. You were on that.
Well, the really important thing to take away from Awestruct is that we have a lot of flexibility with the kinds of templates that we pull into the site, and that's really important because we have a lot of different kinds of content that we want to pull into one site. So the assemble task in Gradle has completed. It took a little while. You see it took 1 minute and 42 seconds, which is kind of a bummer, but it's generated a full version of the site in this build directory _site. So let's, I'm going to jump into there and run a simple little web server. For 1,000. And now I've got my own version of the site up and running, which is very nice and handy. Means when you're authoring content and when we're having content developed and deployed that we can apply some of the same practices that we would use with plugins or with any other piece of code running around in the Jenkins project in terms of like building and testing pull requests and then merging and then packaging that up and deploying it out to the site. And all of this can be automated. It's not all fully automated right now, but it can be automated. So that's that. I'm going to start this web server in another window real quick. And let's create a blog post. I wanted to walk through the blog post thing in particular because this is where I think most people in the Jenkins community can really contribute and sort of share best practices that they've discovered working with Jenkins for their different domains. And blog content is probably the most, I'd say, common type of content that we're adding to the site right now. So we'll focus on that. So in this directory structure, there is the content directory, which is what we'll really focus on. And this layout looks very similar. This directory layout looks very similar to the site layout, which is not coincidental. There's a couple of important distinctions, though, in these underscore directories. These are, I would think of them like internal directories for the static site generation. So we've got some layouts, and we've got partials, which are little snippets of templates. We've got the configuration and some extensions to Ostruct and things like that. And then we've got a bunch of older files, templates, and so on and so forth. But all of these templates, like if you look at events.html.haml, that's a HAML template. Index.html, that's a HAML template, and these are going to get converted into URLs and into pages inside of the new site structure when it gets generated. So index.html, because it's the index file, will just move straight over to index.html, and events.html.haml will move to events/index.html, which means that in the web browser, you can go to jenkins.io/events, and that's where the events are, instead of needing the file suffix and things like that. And that's just to keep a nice, clean URL structure that's not tied to a specific document type. But yes, we were going to write a blog post. So everything, we'll look at the blog directory structure. First, all the blog posts are under content/blog. But forget about this Take 2015 Jenkins survey. That's an import artifact that I can't remove, unfortunately. But we've got these directories based on year. So we've been around for a while. So we've got 2010 all the way up to 2015. And if you look in content blog 2015, you can see all of the blog posts that are public or that were written and published in 2015. As separate files, including this last one, which is the Hacksgiving file. So we could, we're not going to, but we could edit the Hacksgiving blog post and just open it up. It looks just like a normal Markdown file with some special content up at the front. And this is very appropriately defined or termed front matter, which is a common practice in static site generators like Jekyll and Ostruct. And this front matter is just sort of embedded metadata about the document. It's a blog post. It's got a title of Celebrate Hacksgiving. Node ID is an import artifact. Created is an import artifact. But then it's also got tags and author. So I'm going to keep that on the right of the screen, and I'm going to create a new blog post. And we'll say today, the 24th. Hello, Hacksgiving. And I'm going to create this with ASCII doc. I strongly recommend using ASCII doc instead of Markdown. There's some attributes and extensions to ASCII doc, which I won't go into, that make document management a little bit easier. which is why a lot of bigger documentation sites will tend to use AsciiDoc. But one of the things about Ostruct is we can use Markdown for one blog post and we can use AsciiDoc for another. And it will use the file suffix to determine which template engine it should use. So you need to create some front matter. It's going to be a post as well. If I could spell things, not even close. Hello, Hacksgiving. It's a test tag, and it's me again. And so that's all the front matter that you need to submit a blog post. You just need to create a file, and you'll note. Let me jump into a different terminal. I need to write the file. It's going to show up. You'll note that the file name is something very specific. So in the front matter, we never said when this post was written or when it was published. And there's two sort of dates that we keep track of when we generate the static site. One is the sort of publication date, which is in the file name itself. And this is a pattern that's borrowed from Jekyll as well. And then there's the modified time of the file. And the modified time of the file is not something that we can really reliably use for determining the publication date. Because if I go through and I touch every file, then everything will have the modification time of today or something like that, right? So you've got to put your blog post in the appropriate year directory and then give it year-month-day-title. And I'll show you how this actually manifests itself after we run Gradle. Run Gradle, and it's going to assemble the site again. And there's some improvements to the speed of this that I haven't yet done. So this is going to take probably another minute. So we'll come through and we'll start adding some more. Hello world, great. So while that's generating, what can I show in the meantime? Make sure there's no questions. Okay, no questions. So while that's generating, I'll go ahead and show you some of the other interesting stuff that we're working on. Inside of the same repository, there's newer templates, and so we're working on a new design for the site. Right now, this design is very basic. You know, we've got a fixed width here that we can put content in, and most of the content and the content structure is oriented around blog posts. And we want to incorporate a lot more documentation and a lot more useful information on the Jenkins site. So if we go to new, and let's do this on the demo site, so it's not running on localhost. We go to /new, which is where the new structure of the site is starting to come together. You can see a lot of, this is obviously a very, very different look, as you can tell with the slide label number 2 that it's not fully done by a long shot. But one of the things that we're moving away from is being so centered around blog posts. Blog posts are very, very useful, and it's a good way to get news, but it's not a good way, it's now been 5 years of the JenkinsCI.org site. So it's, we've got years of content in blog posts, and some of it's outdated, some of it's still very important, and it's difficult to find. And so we've started to play with this concept we've been calling solution pages, which are, here's a demo of a Docker solution page, just under /Docker, to where if you had something like Docker, or if you had something like Android, and you wanted to find out, here's all of the things going on, or here's all the things you need to know about Docker and Jenkins, this is where you would find that, or all the things around Jenkins and Android, or building iOS applications, or deploying Ruby applications, and so on and so forth. And this site, or this page, sorry, can still aggregate some of those recent blog posts that are relevant, but it can also aggregate important articles from elsewhere on the internet. We can start to call out different plugins that are, this is all placeholder text and links clearly, but we can start to highlight, solution-specific bits of documentation and content in a way that we really can't right now. And so this is all coming together. If you download and run the site, it's all just under /new, and it's all kind of linked off of there. And the current plan we have with this is that this is going to develop side by side with the legacy version of the site. And so we'll continue to contribute content to the legacy version of the site that just gets automatically pulled into the new version of the site. That was more than enough about that. This truly means that my site has been regenerated properly. So we'll go to my blog. Go back to my test site, which I've got running on localhost 8000. We'll go to the blog. See my Hello Hacksgiving post is here. It's now the latest post. And if you look down at the bottom in the status bar, it gets filed under blog 2015/11/24/Hello Hacksgiving. And if you've ever used Jekyll on GitHub pages, this is very much, what you would expect. And this is my blog post. It's very, very simple, clearly, but with the front matter up front, we've got author information and tags, which aren't actually shown in this layout right now, and then a title that gets used here and up in the title bar, and then our content. And that's actually all you need to do in the new static site version of jenkinsci.org to contribute a blog post is create a file. You clone the repo, or you can fork it on github.com. You actually don't ever have to leave github.com in your web browser to contribute a blog post. But you just create a file, and then you submit a pull request, and then one of the editors for the site will review that pull request. And once it gets merged, that can be built and published to jenkinsci.org. I think is going to be a pretty easy way to start contributing to the Jenkins project. So I'm going to go in, I mentioned this, but I'm going to go in and I'm going to create this same file, this same Hello Hacksgiving blog post, but I'm never going to leave this tab, which I think is also a really interesting feature for a static site generation tool on GitHub in particular. So I need to go into the blog directory, go into 2015, and here's all of my blog posts. All right, my network is clearly doing awesome. So sorry about that. I don't have a lot of control over the internet connection here, unfortunately. So thanks, Daniel. Let me go back over to where I was. So I wanted to create a blog post inside of github.com without ever leaving, right? And we've got the content directory, blog directory, 2015, just the same as I was editing on my local machine, but I can click this new file button, and let's say 2015 11/24 happy Hacksgiving.adoc, because we'll do an ASCII file here as well. We've got to define the same front matter as before. We don't get out of doing that, unfortunately. Happy Hacksgiving, and then author or Tyler. And one of the nice things about editing on github.com directly, or I assume this works in the GitHub for Mac application, I'm not sure though, is you can preview it in inline. The front matter will just be displayed as this little table up here. But let's say, let's add a link. You can preview with a nice little click the ASCII doc very, very quickly. So I can write my whole blog post in here, and you know, that may or may not be a good idea if you've got a poor internet connection, like me. But you don't even have to clone down to your machine. You can just come into this view, write your blog post, say, this is my awesome test blog post. Maybe use a slightly better commit message than this. And you can propose the new file. And that'll open up a pull request view, and you can send the pull requests, make sure that everything looks good. Yeah, it looks good. And then someone on the website editor group can review your file and come here and they can preview it and things like that. And then once it's merged, it gets published out to the Jenkins website. Now this is test one. I'm going to close this out. Test. I'll delete my branch too. So you can contribute to the static site version without needing anything more than a GitHub account, which I think is pretty cool. So I'm not sure what else I can really show. I showed let me look at my notes, the new site design. We wrote a blog post, talked about Ostruct. Let's see here. If there's not a whole bunch of questions, either in IRC or in the sidebar on the Hangout, then I'll stop showing my screen. I'll be in the Jenkins IRC channel the rest of the day. I'm going to go ahead and stop this because it's annoying. But I'll be in the Jenkins IRC channel. I'm rtyler. I'm also rtyler on GitHub. And if you're interested in contributing to the site, just let me know and I can help get you set up. Otherwise, I'll be around. Thank you very much.